During his final battle with Aizen, Ichigo sacrifices everything to finally bring down the big bad of the series. And while it does work, there has been a lot of debate in the Bleach community since that fight as to whether or not it was actually necessary on Ichigo's part to go to those lengths to defeat Aizen. Obviously, when Ichigo wins that battle by using the Final Getsuga Tenshou, it costs him his Shinigami powers and his spiritual awareness and everything like that, reducing him to essentially a normal human being. But many people have questioned whether Ichigo even needed to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou, as after his training in the Dangai he was so physically powerful that he was completely decimating Aizen at every turn. In this video, guys, I want to take a quick look at the battle between Ichigo and Aizen and see whether or not Ichigo really needed to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou, or if it was unnecessary on his part, and whether or not he would have defeated Aizen without it regardless. Before we begin, however, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, we are on that push now to 20,000 subs, so if you can help that number go up, that would be amazing. Join our community, follow me on Twitter, and join the Discord. That would be incredible. And yeah, just make sure you hit the notification bell and you'll stay up to date with all my videos. So, looking at the final fight between Ichigo and Aizen then, and for one thing, I really enjoy that Ichigo had a large personal cost to this battle, because if he really was going to steamroll Aizen in this way, I'm glad it came to some kind of a detriment to him, otherwise it would have been far too easy. So from a storytelling standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense that it costs Ichigo an awful lot to actually be able to defeat this monster of an enemy, but was it really necessary to go to the lengths that he did? One thing that's important to remember regarding this fight is that Ichigo's enemy is not really Aizen per se, but more the Hogyoku, and Ichigo is very much on a timer to defeat this thing before it becomes too powerful for Ichigo to stop, and Aizen is merely the vessel for this Hogyoku at this point, and it feeds him power constantly and forces transformations on him all the time, pretty much against his will. The Hogyoku is doing everything it can to keep Aizen alive. If you remember, towards the end of the Aizen fight, Kubo starts going into all this stuff about transcendence and different planes of existence and things like that never really get brought up again afterwards, but they are very important for this particular fight. Supposedly the way it works is if you can no longer feel someone's Reiatsu at all, they have entered a different plane of existence to you where they are no longer even comprehensible by you. When Aizen is in his cocoon form, he can no longer be felt by Isshin Kurosaki or even Kisuke Urahara. These characters have now become far weaker than Aizen to the point where they can't sense his power anymore. After that, obviously, Aizen only grows stronger once he escapes the chrysalis form. He becomes stronger once again, but Ichigo can still feel his power at this point, which is key to defeating Aizen and why Isshin believes it's worth teaching Ichigo the Final Getsuga Tenshou in the first place, because Ichigo can still feel the monster that Aizen is, whereas no one else can. The Hogyoku obviously forces another transformation onto Aizen. After this, he becomes Butterfly Aizen, but that happens against his will. He's killed by Gin, essentially, but the Hogyoku saves his life and makes him even stronger still. And this is very key to why Ichigo had to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou to defeat Aizen, and it proves that if Aizen was ever going to be in any kind of real mortal danger, the Hogyoku would probably just strengthen him even further until he was eventually the most unstoppable being that there actually was. You see, by going into the Dangai, Ichigo essentially shortcuts his way above Aizen and becomes even stronger than he. When Ichigo arrives in Karakura Town after the Dangai stuff, Aizen comments on not being able to sense Ichigo at all, and you have to remember that the final battle with Aizen is all about Aizen's delusions and not having any idea what he's actually talking about. That whole final battle is Aizen trying to justify Ichigo's existence to himself and how he's no longer able to feel Ichigo's power. He even goes so far as to comment on how Ichigo must have thrown everything away just to increase his physical strength, which is obviously not true at all. Ichigo is simply much stronger than Aizen in this version of himself when he's been training in the Dangai for months. Now, that's not to say Aizen isn't still obscenely powerful. He can summon a full incantation Kurohitsugi with the power to distort time and space. But even in this form, Ichigo still breaks it with his bare hands as though it were nothing. In fact, Ichigo has such an obscene lead over Aizen in this stage that it really is hard to see why he felt the need to lose his Shinigami powers to win this fight. In fact, he grabs Aizen by the face and launches him across the battlefield when they arrive for the final fight. And he's also able to just seriously wound Aizen's body just by slicing him with his blade. Not only that, but Aizen transforms again into a monstrous hollow form, presumably even stronger than the last form, but it's really actually quite difficult to say how powerful this form is because of how vague the battle is at this point. Aizen uses his power Fragor to basically level the battlefield, and you do see that even this small little ball of energy that Aizen can create now is capable of enormous damage, visible even from Karakura Town as Tatsuki sees it. But Ichigo comes out with what looks to be merely a charred arm, despite being hit point blank with this thing. So you have to kind of wonder, how powerful is Aizen at this point? Is he anywhere near Ichigo's level still? Or because Aizen comments that Ichigo can no longer use that arm. But bear in mind what I said earlier about Aizen attempting to justify everything in this fight to himself, and you have to wonder if that's even remotely true or not, or if Ichigo's only just kind of merely singed it a bit. Regardless, Aizen does attempt to finish Ichigo off, but Ichigo decides to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou. Now, Ichigo's own words state that he uses it because he's tired of listening to Aizen talk. He says, "I'm sick of your crap, I'm going to end this now." And then he uses the Final Getsuga Tenshou. And the Final Getsuga Tenshou, you have to remember, is essentially supposed to be a one-hit kill move. And I think there's no question here that Ichigo is going for the kill with Aizen. He knows he needs to finish him off, and he needs to finish him off now. And the reason I think it was necessary for Ichigo to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou, and by extension Mugetsu, is because Aizen is going to continuously transform no matter what. The fight is a countdown against the Hogyoku. Ichigo's not really fighting Aizen at this point. He's fighting to defeat the vessel of the Hogyoku before it can make it stronger than him. Because Ichigo's power is essentially locked. And, and maybe it is planes and planes above Aizen at the moment. But Ichigo and Aizen would continue fighting over and over and over. The Hogyoku would keep resurrecting Aizen as it did before. And Aizen would eventually, I'm not saying it's anytime soon because we don't know the upper limits of Ichigo's power at this point, but eventually Aizen would become stronger than him. And at that point it would be over. There would be nothing Ichigo could do. And even the Final Getsuga Tenshou doesn't finish Aizen off because of the Hogyoku's ridiculous power. So the Final Getsuga Tenshou is pretty much what it says on the tin. It's a massive, just colossal Getsuga Tenshou that blankets the sky in essentially nightfall. But it is like a straight, single slice move, and Ichigo uses it clearly with the intention of killing Aizen once and for all, because when you see Aizen on the ground, he has been split in half down the middle, down pretty much his head is in half as well. Which I always thought was like, wow, that's actually pretty crazy from Ichigo. But, he is swinging his sword out of a sense of duty here, but he knows he has to finish Aizen off because Aizen's going to keep coming back regardless. And obviously when Aizen starts to regenerate again, Ichigo is in disbelief at the fact that, he's still regenerating, which obviously to Ichigo implies the Final Getsuga Tenshou didn't work. Although it's quite clear that the Final Getsuga Tenshou was strong enough to strip Aizen of most of his powers entirely. You even see Aizen's ultra final form breaking away once it's been struck. And of course, Ichigo using the Final Getsuga Tenshou does cost him all of his Shinigami powers nearly, it feels like immediately. He's barely able to do anything once he discovers that Aizen has survived his attack. But obviously, Aizen becomes weak enough for Kisuke's contingency Kido to activate, and he's sealed away. But Ichigo, I feel like, had no choice but to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou when he did, and it really was just a guessing game at that point for Ichigo. Yes, he was decimating Aizen at every single turn in his Dangai form. He was able to smash the full incantation Kurohitsuki with his bare hands. He was able to swing Aizen and deal so much damage to him that Aizen, another transformation was forced upon him. And he was able to survive Aizen's Fragor attack with barely any real damage. But the fight would have kept on going, and Ichigo at the end of the day is the one who would have started to struggle to keep up because his power had, at least as far as we know, some kind of upper limit to it, whereas Aizen's would have kept on going continuously. When Aizen transforms for the final time, he even says that the Hogyoku won't allow him to lose to a meager human. And so, really, the question is not, should Ichigo have used Final Getsuga Tenshou, but when should he have used it? Had he used it against Butterfly Aizen, would that have killed him completely? I don't know, I think it's probably impossible because the Hogyoku had essentially made him immortal at that point. It's even stated afterwards that Aizen has become completely immortal. So for Ichigo, it's almost it feels like a lose-lose situation. He was not going to get out of that fight without losing all of his Shinigami powers. And I kind of like that. I feel like there's a really cool sense of there's no turning back once Ichigo arrives in his Dangai state. Because I don't think there really was. What I'm curious to know is the moment Zangetsu taught Ichigo the Final Getsuga Tenshou. From that point on, are we on some kind of a timer, or is it only when Ichigo transforms into the whole black-haired Mugetsu thing that he loses his powers? Because I can't imagine super tall, like long-haired, buff Ichigo ever like just walking around with people if he hadn't used the Final Getsuga Tenshou. But I think that is the crux of the issue. I think Aizen would have continually evolved pretty much no matter what, no matter how that fight had gone and no matter what Ichigo had landed on him. If he hadn't dealt the damage that he did with the Final Getsuga Tenshou, I think Aizen would have just kept on coming back until eventually, doesn't matter how long it was, eventually he was stronger than Ichigo and could defeat him, and then, Karakura Town would be finished. So I think Ichigo did the right thing using the Final Getsuga Tenshou, and from a storytelling standpoint, as I said already, I enjoy that he cost himself so much to do so. I think you shouldn't be able to defeat the final, well, not the final bad guy, but the major villain of the series without any kind of real personal cost. And Kubo wasn't going to kill any of Ichigo's friends, so killing Ichigo's powers, that's another way of doing it. But yeah, I always enjoyed the Final Getsuga Tenshou. I think it's one of the coolest abilities in the series. It's definitely Ichigo's coolest looking transformation, in my opinion. And it was a really memorable and powerful way to end the Arrancar arc, even if it was a bit rushed, that whole kind of final section, that final straight. I do enjoy the Final Getsuga Tenshou, and it is a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but it's a cool one at the end of the day. It comes out of nowhere, but it is really badass, and it does come with a personal cost, and I think that's really important. But I think overall Ichigo had no choice but to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou, and I think he probably felt that way as well, which is why he used it when he did. I think he clearly he said he was going to end the fight in an instant. And maybe he thought he was going to kill Aizen with, just the first slash, but obviously Aizen transforms again. So yeah, I think Ichigo had no choice. I think he used the Final Getsuga Tenshou probably at the right time. And yeah, I enjoyed the fact that he lost all his powers and had to fight to get them back. I really enjoyed that. But guys, let me know in the comments below if you felt Ichigo had to use the Final Getsuga Tenshou, or if he could have just beaten Aizen to the point where the Hogyoku decided that he wasn't going to be its master anymore, just using his Dangai form. I do think that we didn't probably see enough of that fight to make a true estimation, because Ichigo was so ahead the entire way through. That point where Ichigo says, that wasn't your sword swing that destroyed that mountain, it was mine. That's Aizen's real kind of wake-up moment that he's in serious trouble. But we didn't see enough of the fight in general, really, to be able to gauge properly. But Kubo gives us enough, I think, with Aizen's second transformation again, that Ichigo probably was in trouble if he left it for too much longer. So, yeah, to me, I think it was the right time. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you thought. Just a shorter video today, guys, but I really hope you enjoyed it all the same. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about the fight between Ichigo and Aizen, and basically answer the question is, did you think the Final Getsuga Tenshou was necessary, and if not, why not? But until next time, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe, make sure to do that now. You're in the best place for Bleach videos. But until next time, I'll catch you later. See you then.